puzzled, ticked off, or caught off guard. How was that the choice photo, or was that beyond your control?
That's kind of beyond my control. It is kind of an odd photo, isn't it? I can tell you a little story. They had a photo where he looked like kind of a gruff, tough guy, and it was a newspaper that had taken it, a liberal newspaper. Initially, they gave us the photo, but then they decided that we couldn't have it for some reason, and we felt that was because Regnery is the publisher is a fairly conservative publishing house. And then there was another one that showed him very happy that we were going to put on there. And the head of Regnery said, no. He's not. You were not showing Bannon the happy, delightful person. So this is somewhere in between. And I'm not sure what he's thinking in that photo either, to tell you the truth.
Unbelievable. Bannon, always the rebel. Keith Koffler, our guest today on WNDB's Mark Bernier program. Keith, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure. I appreciate it.
More of Mark Bernier Replay today. Highlights from today's show that you may have missed. Coming up on WNDB.
One of the newer areas of personal injury law that we specialize in here at Farah & Farah involves an injury called mild traumatic brain injury. This injury often occurs during an accident, and often the injured doesn't even lose consciousness. But the injury is real, and the symptoms are debilitating. We're talking about memory loss, the inability to focus, and personality changes. And very often the MRI or CAT scan come back normal, but the symptoms are still there. So we bring in a neuropsychologist who does other tests that will prove that this condition exists. We are working hard in this very important area of personal injury law, and we are finding that even relatively minor accidents can result in a mild traumatic brain injury, which is anything but mild. So don't wait. Go to farandfarah.com to learn more about traumatic brain injuries or call us at 456-3333, Daytona.
Have you seen those bright work shirts that PNS Paving wears? Or what about those sleek black embroidered polos at Stonewood Grill? Did you see those durable work shirts the Giles Electric team wears? Do you know what they all have in common? They went to Mid-Florida Sportswear for all their business apparel. Why? Because Mid-Florida Sportswear is Daytona Beach's local printer for over 40 years that's been serving businesses like yours with work t-shirts, embroidered polos, hats, and more. From the front of the house in a restaurant to the back of the warehouse, Mid-Florida Sportswear can outfit your whole company. Businesses, government agencies, and more like Cunningham Oil and the Daytona Beach Fire Department rely on Mid-Florida Sportswear. For a great deal on t-shirts, polos, hats, safety vests, and more, call Mid-Florida Sportswear today at 386-258-5632 or stop by the Big Teal building behind the airport on Bellevue. After hours, visit mfswear.com and send your quote in. That's mfswear.com. Mid-Florida Sportswear in the Big Teal building behind the airport.
This is Mark Bernier Replay today. Highlights from today's show that you may have missed.
Duke Seekers is an independent trader and portfolio manager offering personal service. You can reach him at 386-214-6897. He's joining us live today on WNDB. And we'll get to the tax reform story in just a bit. But first, how did the market close, Duke?
Well, we had a pretty good day today after a couple of bloody days here. The Dow was actually up 187 at the close, or 0.8%. The NASDAQ was up 87. It was today, which was up about 1.3%. The S&P 500 was up 21. Crude oil suffered a small loss, down 17 cents per barrel to 55.16. And the 10-year Treasury yield was actually up a bit, about 1%, closing at 2.36. So pretty good day all the way around. Problem we have is after we got into sell-off mode is that if this is simply because the House passed their own health care bill, tax bill, this thing's still going to have to get through the Senate, and that's where it's going to get sticky, I think. There's 4 senators who are, let's call them reluctant to vote positively on this, and that's on the Republican side. So we'll have to see what happens, but if it doesn't pass the Senate, I think there's going to be some more problems with this market.
What about Ron Johnson? What's his problem?
Well, I thought Johnson really was just sticking to his guns. He wants a couple of provisions baked into the tax relief cake, and I think his points were legitimate. And he, out of the objectors, the potential objectors, and there's 4 or 5 of them on the Republican side in the Senate. It's not just Johnson, though he got the publicity today, but there's Murkowski, McCain, got a couple of other ones, and you've got about 5 of them there, and what it's going to take to win them over, I don't know. They may fall right in line and just decide to pass after a little bit of debate, but this is going to be tricky here, and I'm not all that positive on it right now. We'll have to see. I mean, let's let the Senate vote, but it's one of those things, Mark, that I could see this thing actually going down to defeat. Now, it doesn't mean that they can't, have another vote on it before the end of the year, but the Senate is a funny place, and especially these days. And I just wonder, especially just take Bob Corker, for example. He's already said he's not running. Same thing with Jeff Flake. And these guys have a little bit of an axe to grind, and I don't think it's fairly that they do. But if they want to just be sticky about it, if they don't want to be cooperative, if they don't want to go along with things, well, they can mess things up badly. And it's only going to take 1 or 2 of them to do so, and we've got some problems getting it through the Senate. So I would just be a little bit skeptical right here. I don't think it's necessarily a type of thing where it's just going to fly through the Senate.
I spoke today with a homeowner. She and her husband have just bought a home in San Clemente, California, and they're very, very concerned that the mortgage interest deduction would go away as part of tax reform. And I assured her, to my understanding, that's going to stay because it would cripple too many Americans. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm not hearing anything about the that particular item being done away with. So I don't think they have any worries as far as that goes.
Well, the reason is it's supposed to go away. The initial rollout, but maybe they've taken that off the table, just like they took off limiting 401k donations. Still, I think tax deductions to charitable giving is probably going to take a hit if people can't deduct it on their income tax.
Well, that's the case right there. But as far as I know, the mortgage situation that's going to stay in place. I think they realized there was just going to be too much pushback for it. What I would like to see would be truly a flat tax with no deductions. But we're not going to get that, at least not now, and probably never.
What about the fair tax idea?
You mean a consumption-based tax?
Yes, fair tax.
Yeah, I'm all for it. That's what I wish we would do. But when you have people leading the House and Senate that are essentially spineless, they're not visionary, they're not people that want real change, and we need real change. It's one thing if you're doing change for the sake of change. That's not what we're talking here. This tax code is an abomination. It's so negative on so many levels that it shocks me that this country, the United States, has a tax system the way we have it right now. But there's absolutely no impetus inside of government to change it. There are plenty of people on the outside that would like to change it, various ideas, and of course I think the best one of all is the fair tax. But there's absolutely no push inside of government to do so. There are certainly some members of Congress that would like to change it, but they're not the people that sit in the power seats. And until they are, it's not going to get a fair viewing. And with that in mind, we're stuck with what we have for now, and that's a shame. This country should have the fairest tax system of all. We should be paying the least amount of tax, at least on a percentage basis, of any country. And instead, we're one of the higher. And I think that's wrong on so many levels. It's unbelievable.
Well, if this thing goes down in flames, is there enough time to come back with sort of a redo, a do-over, and get it in before the end of the year?
If we had good leadership, I'd say yeah, without a doubt. The thing is, with McConnell in the Senate, and that's probably, it's past the House now. So with McConnell leading, such as it is, the Senate, I wonder if he can do it, because McConnell has proven himself to be he's not much of a leader, Mark. He's not visionary, and this is a time for a visionary leader, especially in the Senate. And yet this guy he's been a real disappointment. Don't forget, we need to go back to last January, before Trump was inaugurated. McConnell was saying some of the right things. I was actually pleased to hear him say these things. And yet he hasn't lived up to any of them. And I'm talking about, he was making comments about health care reform and tax reform, and he was saying the right things. Funny now, Trump's in office. It's been, 10 months now that Trump's been in there. And McConnell has been, he's worse than just not doing well. He's almost obstructionist. And with that in mind, he needs to go. The problem is, how are we going to get him gone? And I don't really see a way to do it, any realistic way. There's certainly ways to do it. But anything within reason, no. And that's a shame. And it could actually lead to the Republicans losing the House, possibly, not the House, but the Senate, and possibly the House in 18. So these guys are going to have to watch it. I'm sure McConnell is well aware that the potential is there to lose control of the Senate. But, the guy just doesn't seem to care. I'm sure he does on some level, but he just doesn't act like it. And with that in mind, it just speaks to, it almost screams that we need new leadership. But I don't see where we're going to get it.
Okay. We also have the story now of the Tweeden woman, who's the co-anchor of the morning show on KABC in Los Angeles. She said that Al Franken, this is Leanne Tweeden, Al Franken came at her, put his hand on the back of my head, smashed his lips against mine. Franken now is accused of forcibly kissing and groping this Leanne Tweeden years ago, and now they're calling for an investigation into him. Where does it stop? This may be breaking news for some people. I just stumbled into the story when I was coming on the air this afternoon.
Yeah, it's been on all day. The thing is, this is something that'll go away quickly. Al Franken's already made his mea culpa. I suspect that it'll just be allowed. And don't forget, we're talking a press here that's overwhelmingly Democrat, and runs as the public relations wing of the Democrat Party for the most part. So I think this thing will have a shelf life of about a day and a half. It'll go away, and unless there's something more comes out about Franken, it'll just fade, and by the weekend it'll just be gone. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting in a sick way, but I just don't think Franken's going to lose his job at this point, though he could be a sacrificial lamb. If the Democrats need to get rid of somebody ultimately, it'll probably be Franken. He'll have to walk the plank for the good of the party. But I don't think it's going to get that far, Mark. I think this story's going to fade. We've got one more day till the weekend. The weekend comes, the story will just fade away because there's nobody in the media, in mainstream media really, that wants to pursue this sort of thing. After all, Franken's got a D after his name, so it just doesn't matter.
Wow. I just thought that this stuff would wrap at some point. I mean, we can't be having investigations on stuff that, let's see, we're going back 12 years on this one, and it's taping for a television show. He's not a member of the Senate. If they're looking for the baby Jesus, to quote a line from a former judge and state representative, if they're looking for the baby Jesus who's serving in public office, they're not going to find him. I'm sorry. A lot of these people have checkered past, and who's going to set the bar for whether they should stay or they should go?
Well, who should do it, I guess, are the people. They are elected officials. They're not appointed. So, we, the people actually have a choice here. Next time around, we can either reelect them or we can send them packing. And, unfortunately, a lot of people don't care about this stuff. Yeah, it makes the news. People are talking about it. We'll have to see. Let's that Franken makes through this particular situation unscathed. Are there enough people next time he's up for election in the Senate that remember it and weigh that as to whether this is the guy that they want representing them and their state? I don't know what will happen, but I doubt that it'll matter that much. If the guy was a Republican, forget about the publicity about it. There are a lot of people that vote Republican that would weigh this heavier than I think most people who vote Democrat. And so, it's the type of thing a Republican will pay heavier for the same sin, let's say. And that's probably as it should be. But I don't know if Franklin's constituency really cares that much about it. Don't forget, he's a true liberal, a very reliable vote for the Democrat agenda. So a lot of people on the Democrat side just kind of, if he's that way, they just look the other way. Don't forget Bill Clinton. I mean, sort of the god of the...
FM 93.5, AM 1150, WNDB Daytona Beach. Proud to be locally owned, a Southern Stone station.
Staying in the race, I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. Alabama Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore again denying allegations of sexual misconduct from decades ago.
As you know, the Washington Post has brought some scurrilous, false allegations, which I have emphatically denied time and time again. They're not only untrue, but they have no evidence to support them.
Moore speaking at a faith leaders conference in Birmingham, Alabama. People in his home state seem to be unaffected by the allegations.
A Fox News poll of likely Alabama voters shows 38% believe the allegations against Roy Moore are true. 37% do not, 25% unsure. Regardless of whether they believe the allegations, 54% of all voters and 75% of Republicans in the state believe Moore should stay in the race.
Fox's Jonathan Sari, but the poll shows Roy Moore trailing Democratic candidate Doug Jones 50 to 42% just a month ago. They were tied. Several top Republicans have said if the allegations are true that Moore should step aside. The Senate Ethics Committee says it intends to resume its preliminary inquiry into New Jersey Democrat Senator Bob Menendez, even as a mistrial is declared in his corruption case.
A Fox News poll of likely Alabama.
After speaking with each jury member, Judge William Walls determined any further deliberations would be, to use his word, futile. One juror said after the trial, the jury leaned 10-2 toward acquittal. An emotional Senator Menendez spoke outside court. He said even though they did not agree, he thanked the New Jerseyans who served on the jury.
Who saw through the government's false claims and used their Jersey common sense to reject it.
Menendez even had a message for those he said were trying to dig his political grave, saying he knows who they are and won't forget.
Fox's Cornell Scott, Fox News, fair and balanced.
The clock is ticking. Every day you put off buying life insurance can cost you big time. The older you get, the more you'll have to pay. And a sudden accident or unexpected illness could cause your rates to skyrocket or even make you uninsurable. Beat the clock. Call SelectQuote now. No hassle, no obligation. In minutes, you'll have a choice of your best rates from up to 10 highly rated life insurance companies. Richard, 40 years old, takes meds to control his cholesterol. Still, SelectQuote got him a 10-year, $500,000 policy for under $25 a month. Under $1 a day. Don't risk your family security another minute. Get your free quote now. Just call 800-280-8787. That's 800-280-8787. 800-280-8787. Or go to SelectQuote.com. Since 1985, we shop, you save.
Get full details on the example policy at SelectQuote.com/commercials. Or price could vary depending on your health, issuing company, and other factors. Not available in all states.
The opinions expressed on this show are those of the participants, the hosts, the guests, and the callers, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions and views of Southern Stone Communications, WNDB Radio, its employees, and friends. Comments regarding WNDB's programming can be addressed to D. Lang at DaytonaRadio.com.
Live from Daytona Beach, Florida, bringing a voice to America's forgotten working class, speaking the truth for the America that Washington left behind, making America great again, 1 hour at a time. This is Trump Talk Live, where we the people have the right voice, presented by the Republican Party of Volusia County. Now, here are your hosts, Vic Baker and Tony Ledbetter.
Greetings, fellow American Patriot Trumppublicans, and welcome to the tax reform revolution. Obamacare mandate relief, Judge Roy Moore handwriting on the wall, Senator Frankengroper, radioactive Hillary, Trump triumph episode of Trump Talk Live, and that was a mouthful. The home of fearless truth-telling about President Donald Trump and his transformational mission to leave more of your hard-earned dollars in your pockets. Put America first in deal after deal after deal around the globe. Stand up to the rogue regimes, terrorists, and lefty lunatics, and leave the Obama legacy on the dust heap of history. After the longest overseas presidential trip since Richard Nixon, President Trump got right down to business again today, paying a personal visit to Capitol Hill to push for passage of his signature tax reform bill. Our president wants lower rates for individuals and businesses and no more complicated loopholes that gum up the U.S. tax code with 70,000 pages of gibberish and Alice in Wonderland math. The House came through late today, and that's the first step. President Trump has to keep the GOP Senate on the same page to get the bill to his desk before Christmas. Senate Republicans now want to make up for their fumble on repealing Obamacare by zeroing out the individual mandate. They can do it with just 50 votes and a tiebreaker from Vice President Mike Pence, thanks to the U.S. Supreme Court, which declared that the mandate is a tax. That means a simple Senate majority is all that's needed to pass it under budget reconciliation rules. A little karma comes back to bite the Democrats here. Ripping off the Band-Aid on the individual mandate will mean that Americans will no longer face tax penalties for ditching the unaffordable Obamacare policies that barely cover anything. It also means that the free market can take over again, forcing big insurance carriers to compete for your dollars. Guess what happens when companies have to compete? They lower their prices. This ain't rocket science, folks, but the Democrats get D's in math every day. They claim premiums will rise. Well, maybe in the short term, but that's until no one buys the crappy coverage. They claim millions will go without insurance. Probably, but that's because millions will choose not to take coverage with ridiculous premiums, unaffordable deductibles, and limited coverage. It's a known fact that lower middle-class families are hit hardest with the costs of Obamacare, including that outrageous tax penalty for deciding to ditch the unaffordable coverage. So Democrats call that a disaster. We call it liberation from Washington-imposed economic slavery. The D.C. swamp, meanwhile, is doing everything it can to sink the Senate candidacy of Judge Roy Moore in Alabama. The Washington Post has found some women who claim the judge made advances when they were teens. The judge denies behaving inappropriately and wants a handwriting analysis to disprove one accuser's claims. This is going to be very messy. It smells like a political hit job, but the accusations are piling up. The jury is still out in the court of public opinion. We'll get a verdict at the polls December 12th when they have their election. Expect more mischief in the meantime. And from our shoe on the other foot department, a female journalist now accuses Minnesota Senator Al Franken of sexual harassment. Wait till you see our picture of Senator Frankengroper in action. Things are getting hotter for radioactive Hillary. A secret witness has testified before Congress about the Russian firm that got the Uranium One deal. The founder of the mudslinging Oppo research film Fusion GPS has told House investigators behind closed doors that he never bothered to verify the outrageous lies in the Trump dossier before peddling the phony smear job to reporters. Does that sound like Judge Roy Moore? Judge Roy Moore? It does. It turns out that radioactive Hillary may get a special prosecutor all to herself. Isn't that special? Geiger Counters all around, folks. Lie detectors would be more appropriate, I think. Attorney General Jeff Sessions got an earful from Congress about these shenanigans this week, but Sessions is not tipping his hand, unlike cover-up Comey, who talked a lot but ended up doing nothing about Hillary. President Trump is still basking in the afterglow of an Asian tour that yielded $250 billion in new business deals for America, along with Asian solidarity against North Korea's nuclear saber-rattling. Even China is tightening the screws on that diminutive maniac in Pyongyang. Trump Talk Live comes to you from the studios of WNDB 93.5 FM, 1150 AM in Daytona Beach. You can also listen to us online at TrumpTalkLive.com. As always, we thank the Volusia County Teenage Republicans, led by Volusia TARS Chairman Duncan DeMarche, handling our graphic controls tonight, assisted by his stalwart TARS associates Ian Escalante and Malcolm Swaggerty. Now, you can most times watch us live on Trump Talk Live on Facebook Live, featuring graphics on the Volusia County Republican Party Facebook page, where we're streaming. We were streaming right now, but we have a malfunction. We're going to have it up by tomorrow for you to see. You can also watch us by going to the Vic Baker channel right now on YouTube Live, searching for Trump Talk Live. Subscribe to our free Trump Talk Live podcast on iTunes or Google Play. I'm your Trump-Publican truth teller, Vic Baker, hosting Trump Talk Live tonight with a man who's drawing attention from national media for Volusia County's role as one of a handful of counties out of some 3,100 that made a pivotal difference in electing President Donald Trump. Volusia County Republican Chairman Tony Ledbetter. Tony.
Thank you, Vic. That was a great monologue. I'm glad to be back. I apologize. I was out for the last 2 weeks. Went to have dinner with the Vice President and had to go back and see my favorite judge again. I went back to Gainesville last week. My daughter lives close by, and so I bought her tickets to go see Judge Jeanine Pirro one more time. And of course, we found out from the Washington Examiner that they have picked Volusia County as one out of 9 counties in the entire United States to track and to talk to us in the road to victory in 2020. So that'll be exciting to have them here talking to all of our Trumpettes and other people here in the county. But remember this, we need to drain the swamp, and the swamp is in the Senate. The swamp is not in the House. The House is doing their job. The House is doing a great job. The House passed the tax reform bill today. So we need to continue to focus our drain the swamp ideas on the Senate, because they're the ones doing everything wrong. And thank you, Joe, for helping out the last couple of weeks. You always keep the fires burning, and I appreciate it. So what's going on, Vic?
Well, as you said, Tony, the House Republicans have actually passed the sweeping tax reform package by a mostly party line vote that, if enacted, would deliver the first major legislative victory of the Trump era. President Trump visited Capitol Hill today ahead of the vote to give him a pep talk. He spoke on both the Senate and the House side. So that, as you know, that's going to provide tax relief, simpler tax brackets, simpler code, fewer deductions, fewer loopholes. We're looking to eliminate the estate tax, the alternative minimum tax. We're looking to give people more control over their lives and their finances, and businesses would see a reduction from the corporate rate from 35 down to 20, and pass-throughs on S corporations for small businesses would pay a lower rate for taxation too. Now, the Senate has a different version with more shaves and more tax brackets. It's a little more complicated, but one of the things the senators are doing, and we have graphics on it to show the tax reform graphic. One of the things the senators are doing is they've discovered that because John Roberts flipped to the other side and determined that this mandate was actually a tax, that was the only way he could justify the federal government telling you to engage in economic activity by calling it a tax if you didn't. Because that, well, they got hoisted with their own petards, because now the Republicans with reconciliation can, with 51 or 50 votes, they can manage to repeal the Obamacare individual mandate. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that you won't face a penalty if you choose not to take Obamacare, which has ridiculously high premiums and or deductibles for a lot of people. Those tax credits are just there to prop up those high premiums and allow people to be able to afford it, but it's really not affordable because what the government's doing is fueling the greed. I'm not saying greed, but the profit margins of these insurance companies by allowing them to get those premiums way too high. Now, when you take that away, what happens? Well, people are initially without coverage, but what happens is the market will fill the void and there will be alternatives provided to people at more affordable rates, Tony. I believe that's true.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, you'll find the insurance companies that'll come out with more different kinds of products or coalitions where people get together, or associations get together, and all of that's already started. And it's important to let the market forces figure out this problem and take this mandate. Leave the mandate there, who cares, but take the tax penalty away. So
That's right. The mandate will be meaningless. It'll have no teeth. Now let's listen to Speaker Ryan, who spoke this week about why this is such a big deal for hardworking average Americans to get this tax reform through. Cut number 2.
Here's why this is such a big moment. And it has nothing to do with politics or politicians. Most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. A whole lot of people are telling us that they're $400 away from a disaster. Instead of thinking about getting ahead, you got more people in this country worried about falling behind. This anxiety that we have in this country, that feeling that people are one emergency away from a disaster, is a daily reality for most of our fellow citizens. Meanwhile, Washington has been propping up a tax system riddled with special loopholes for the well-connected. This bill changes this. We are cutting taxes for middle and low-income families. The typical median household of 4 gets an $1,182 tax cut. That's big relief for people who really feel like they are one bad news away from a disaster.
And that's the summary to start with. And he says it means greater prosperity for actual working American taxpayers. Next cut.
This is not just a tax bill. This is a jobs bill. It's a fairness bill. By leveling the playing field and making our businesses more competitive, guess what? Wages are going to go up. The analysis is very clear. This will help wages raise in this country. This will help living standards increase in this country. More jobs will come home. So by unrigging this system, by making it so fair and so simple, and yes, you will be able to do it on a postcard.
On a postcard, folks. Wouldn't we love that? Our accountants wouldn't be too happy because they wouldn't have a lot of work to do. This bill is not for D.C., he says. It's for you, the taxpayer.
Here's what's going on right now. People in Washington are focusing on what this means for other people in Washington. But for us, it is about the hard-working people in America who are working hard and feel like they're slipping behind. This should not be about settling. You know, people right now are hoping things will get better. This bill will make things better for hard-working Americans. We want a country where everybody can rise. We want a country where people are confident. We want a country where people can aspire and believe that they can reach their American idea, their dream. That's the country we're used to having, and that's the country we're going to have by getting this thing done.
Okay, now over to the Senate side, and we're going to do a couple of bites, then we'll go to the break. Senator Orrin Hatch, who chairs the Senate Finance Committee, had a markup on their version of the tax bill this week. And we're going to start with cut 2, where he says, don't ask us. The Supreme Court decided this individual mandate penalty is a tax, so here's what we're going to do.
I think we can all agree that the individual mandate is a tax. After all, the Supreme Court would have nullified the mandate had they not reached that very conclusion. So the mandate really only exists today because it is a tax.
Pretty simple there, right? Okay, now, the individual mandate, and listen to the senator explain this to you. The Democrats are always talking about the poor middle class getting hit in the chops. Well, this time it's the Republicans standing up for the middle class, not the Democrats. The individual mandate poses a disproportionate burden on lower middle class taxpayers. Cut 3.
By the way, the individual mandate isn't just any tax. It's a terribly regressive tax that imposes harsh burdens on low and middle income taxpayers. According to the IRS, roughly 80% of Americans who paid the individual mandate tax in 2015 made less than $50,000 a year. Zeroing out the mandate will raise $318 billion over 10 years, money we use in our march to actually lower taxes for the middle class. Some colleagues have spent a great deal of time over the past couple of days lamenting the possibility of tax hikes on the middle class. Yet today, I expect that we'll hear these same colleagues argue that this tax, which once again overwhelmingly burdens low to middle income taxpayers, is an absolute necessity, and without it, our health care system will descend into oblivion.
We'll see which GOP senators, Tony, decide to sandbag it once it gets to them. But in the meantime, we at least have a House passage.
Unfortunately, the swamp's still there, and we'll have to deal with the swamp creatures.
Yeah, we'll return with more Trump Talk Live and the Judge Roy Moore matter in a moment.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033. Stay tuned for more Trump Talk Live, bringing a voice to America's forgotten working class 1 hour at a time.
Feeling stuck in a state of compensation stagnation? You know, another year with no raise. Then let State Farm agent Sonia Mori in DeLand help you get to a better state with a discount double check that can stretch your hard-earned dollars a little farther. Sonia will go through your car insurance to make sure you're getting all the discounts you deserve. Discounts that could add up to 40% and put a few hundred extra dollars in your pocket. Sound good? Then get your budget to a better state by calling State Farm agent Sonia Mori in DeLand today. Discounts may vary state to state.
Crime, fire, natural disaster. All great reasons to own a safe to keep your precious belongings and papers protected. Kittle's Key Shop has the safe you need. Don't trust a discount safe from a big box store. Kittle's sells the best, and they install them, move them, and do combination changes too. Stop by and see their selection today and talk to people who are experts. When it comes to safes, there's only one name you need to know. Kittle's Key Shop in Holly Hill and South Daytona. Visit kittles.net.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033.
Welcome back, Trumppublicans. Well, the Washington Post decided we just can't afford to have Judge Roy Moore, an upstanding man of long-standing reputation for standing up for things like the Ten Commandments, on the floor of the Senate. Absolutely not. So they decided to say he's a dirty old man that was chasing little girls 40 years ago when he wasn't such an old man. Judge Moore on Veterans Day came out and responded to this last-minute smear. It would be called an October surprise, but his election's in December, so we'll call it a November surprise.
November surprise, right.
So here's Judge Moore's response. Judge denial. Okay. Well, Judge did respond. We're going to wait for it. As soon as we get it going, Phil will let us know that it's ready. Judge Moore responded by adamantly denying that he did anything inappropriate with young women. Of course, he dated some young women many years ago. He's been married for some 38 years to the same woman, and he has children and grandchildren. And there's never been any hint of scandal along those lines from the judge. So as soon as we get that up, we will try to do that. Audio's too low on that. What about cut number 2? Does that work?
All 4, yeah.
All 4 are gone. So we don't have Judge Moore's. Okay. Well, let's go to Roy Moore, the attorney, speaking in his behalf. His longtime confidant and attorney, Philip Juragay, says he's never seen inappropriate behavior by the judge in 24 years he's been at his side, and he's been at his side for, as I said, that long time. So let's listen.
I've traveled with Judge Moore all over the state, different states across the nation. I've been with him in probably over 100 different meetings and been around probably in excess of 10,000 different ladies in Judge Moore's presence. And not once, not one time, have I ever seen him act even remotely inappropriate against any woman, toward any woman. Not when they were walking away, not when he and I were in private afterwards. That's the man that I know and that I've known for the last 24 years.
That's the attorney speaking. Just to remind you folks, you may not be seeing us on Facebook Live, but we're on YouTube Live on the Vic Baker channel. You can see us there. This show will appear on Facebook later once we get the video reconstituted for you. Attorney Allred, Gloria Allred, who is famous for going after men with these accusations, and her client, Moore accuser Beverly Nelson, the judge says are lying about Moore's yearbook inscription to her years ago, and they want Gloria Allred, who still hasn't said whether she'll do that, them to produce the yearbook to an independent handwriting specialist to prove that it's not really his handwriting. Here's what he has to say about that.
During the press conference that Ms. Nelson and Gloria Allred had on Monday, they both said that Ms. Nelson, after the allegations, had never seen nor had any contact with Judge Moore. As it turns out, in 1999, Ms. Nelson filed a divorce action against her then husband, Mr. Harris. Guess who that case was before? It was filed in Etowah County, and the judge assigned was Roy S. Moore, Circuit Judge of Etowah County. There was contact.
So there are holes in a lot of these stories, and a lot of the women. Another accuser was a deaf interpreter for Hillary Clinton, a very, very devoted Democrat. In any case, the yearbook handwriting is suspect, according to Judge Moore and his attorney, and the Moore attorney demands analysis by independent handwriting experts.
You may remember on Monday, Ms. Nelson and Ms. Allred, in support, really the only piece of evidence they had in addition to the allegations was a yearbook where they claimed that it had been signed. And they said very specifically, look back at what they said. Everything on that page they said was written by Judge Moore. Now, Judge Moore not only has denied everything she said before, but now flatly denies that. And he says it's not true. We have a handwriting expert, that's looking at those. But here's the problem. A handwriting expert can't look at a copy on the internet, right? They've got to look at an original. So right now, Trent Garman, our attorney, has sent a letter, or is sending a letter, to Gloria Allred demanding that the yearbook be released. We'll send it to a neutral custodian who'll keep chain of custody, and our professional expert will examine it, and we'll find out, is it or is it a fraud?
Yeah, and Tony, we can pull up the Swiss screen if we can talk here. Tony, we understand that the mall manager of the Gadsden Mall came forward today and said, contrary to these published reports, that he had been banned from the mall. The judge for prowling for girls. The mall manager says, I don't recall that at all. It's been made up. Pastors are coming to his defense, male and female pastors. And some of these women one of the women accusers does have a history of accusing pastors of sexual impropriety as well. So I'm not going to say that accuse the accusers necessarily, but I'm going to say that you have to, it's a very dangerous thing when you accuse somebody of sexual misconduct, because it's very hard to prove a negative. It's very hard.
Well, you can go back in history, and they've covered this on Fox. Laura Ingram's covered it, where she went back over 4 or 5 or 6 different stories that where the accusers they accused, and then it came out to be false. And then we go back to Herman Cain. Herman Cain, the same thing was done to him many years ago, and where are those women today? They have no interest in doing anything because none of them went to the police. If any of this was truthful, they would go, file police reports and do something about it, not 30 or 40 years later. So I believe and support Roy Moore.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell, you'd think being a fellow Republican would want him to succeed, but he's kind of shooting himself in the foot by floating the idea that Jeff Sessions should be put in as a write-in candidate to take his old seat back in Alabama.
Right. He's the leader of the swamp.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that the good way of thinking is this is convenient for the Rhino Republicans to get rid of somebody like Roy Moore who won't march to their tune. So let's move on to another senator, and I'm going to give him a new title now. It's going to be Senator Frankengroper, the Democrat senator from Minnesota. Leanne Tweeden, a journalist who anchors the morning news at Talk Radio 790 and KABC in Los Angeles, California, is accusing the senator of fondling her while she was sleeping on a military flight and shoving his tongue down her throat without her consent while rehearsing a skit for the USO tour. This apparently happened in December of 2006, according to her. She included in an article a photograph which we're showing on YouTube. You can't see it on Facebook. You can see it on our YouTube broadcast or webcast. That clearly shows the Democrat senator grabbing her breasts while she's sleeping. According to Tweeden, the unwanted kiss occurred during a rehearsal for a USO skit. And, so Senator Franken, who's been finger-pointing himself a lot of late, has some splaining to do about that sort of thing. So, and McConnell is going to call for an ethics probe now of Senator Franken. So the shoe's on the other foot. Let's see what happens there. Speaking of misbehaving Democrats, Tony, Hillary Clinton. A secret witness in the Senate Clinton probe is an ex-lobbyist for a Russian firm. He's testified behind closed doors. Senate Republicans say their investigation of Hillary Clinton's role in approving a deal, and we've got lots of graphics to go with that, in approving U.S. uranium mine sales to a Russian company, hinges in part on the testimony of a secret informant in a bribery and extortion scheme inside that same company. The Senate committee searching for Clinton's alleged wrongdoing is keeping their witness's name cloaked. However, we've discovered from publication in the world of the internet, the man's name is William D. Campbell. He's a lobbyist. Confirmed to Reuters that he's the informant who will testify. He hasn't done so yet. And provide documents to Congress about the Obama administration's 2010 approval of the sale of Uranium One, a Canadian company with uranium mines in the United States, to Russia's Rosatom company, which is controlled by Putin. At the time of the sale, Campbell was a confidential source for the FBI in a Maryland bribery and kickback investigation of the head of that company. And Campbell says he wants to testify because of his concerns about Russia's activities in the United States, but declined to comment further. Campbell's lawyer, Victoria Tenzing, who's not previously identified him, said despite Campbell telling the government how corrupt the company was, the company still got permission to buy Uranium One. Now, Fusion GPS founder, another corrupt firm. This guy, Glenn Simpson, he spoke before House investigators in closed-door meeting. And, of course, nothing stays secret in Washington anymore, right?
Right. This is all treasonous stuff.
Fox News' Catherine Herridge reports that Simpson never even verified the dossier claims before peddling the smut to reporters on Trump. It was all these lies.
It's all lies.
And the source said that Simpson acknowledged he did not personally look into certain aspects of the dossier authored by former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele and contained salacious allegations about the Trump team's ties to Russia. He never spoke to the underlying sources. There was no due diligence done.
Because the Democrats are paying for it.
Congressman Mark Meadows has called again for a special prosecutor, and Jim Jordan was on fire. Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, was on the Hill for testimony. Jim Jordan, as well as Trey Gowdy, were both on fire, grilling the Attorney General about this. We will return after our break with more of that on Trump Talk Live.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033. You have the right place on the dial, and when we return, you'll hear more Trump Talk Live, telling the truth about all things Trump.
It's time for some high-flying fun this fall with the New Smyrna Beach Kite Festival, presented by Ruin Zifra. Come on out Saturday and Sunday, November 18th and 19th, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on the beach at the Flagler Avenue Beach Approach for this free family festival. There are kite demonstrations, competitions, free lessons, and best of all, free kites to the first 300 kids each day. So plan on some family fun Saturday and Sunday, November 18th and 19th at the New Smyrna Beach Kite Festival, presented by Ruin Zifra and sponsored by New Smyrna Beach Chevy, Metro PCS, Riverside Clinical Research, the Central Florida Kite Club, and the Kite Shop. Come fly with us from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. as fall settles in New Smyrna Beach. For more info, call 1-800-541-9621 or text KITE to 40691. That's KITE to 40691. Brought to you by the Southern Stone Event Group and FM 93.5 and AM 1150 WNDB.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033.
All right, we're back. Talk a few minutes about our sponsors that help us out every week. We have Milne Roofing, Marino's Pizza over in DeLand, south of Daytona Storage, and, of course, Sonia Maury, who helps us out every week, and she's a State Farm agent. So we appreciate all of the help from our sponsors, and Back at you there, Vic.
Okay, back to the current events. Now, Jim Jordan, as I said, was on fire on the Hill when he was grilling the Attorney General about this dossier that formed the basis for all the search warrants and the snooping that led to Bob Mueller getting a job in the first place as independent counsel. Well, the dossier was a pack of lies, so, it's a flimsy foundation, foundation of sand. Jim Jordan wanted to know, did the FBI pay Christopher Steele to produce that phony dossier? Let's hear it.
Mr. Attorney General, did the FBI pay Christopher Steele?
Where am I?
Right here.
Yeah.
Did the FBI pay Christopher Steele, the author of the dossier?
Those are matters you'll have to direct to the, I think, maybe the special counsel.
And why is that? I'm just asking if someone
Well, I'm not
payroll
able
of the FBI.
to reveal internal investigatory matters here that's under the investigation of anybody, but particularly, I think,
This happened in the summer of 2016. We know the Clinton campaign, the Democrat National Committee, paid through a law firm, Fusion GPS, to produce the dossier. We know the author was Christopher Steele. It's been reported that he was on the payroll of the FBI. I'm just wanting to know if, in fact, that is the case.
I'm not able to provide an answer to you.
Did the FBI present the dossier to the FISA court?
I'm not able to answer that.
Okay. Back on camera about leaks of Comey's briefing to Trump about the dossier. He, early January, before Trump took office, he went to Trump Tower and he briefed him about this dossier garbage and what was in it. And so Jordan wanted to know more from AG Sessions about that.
On January 6, then FBI Director James Comey briefed President-elect Trump up in New York about the dossier. Shortly thereafter, the fact that that meeting took place and the subject of the meeting was the dossier was leaked to CNN. Do you know who leaked that information?
I do not.
Are you investigating who leaked that information?
That would be a matter within the investigatory powers of the special counsel.
You said you got a number of
Department
investigations going on, Mr. Attorney General, regarding leaks. Is that likely one of those that you're investigating?
I'm not able to reveal the existence of investigations or not.
Okay. Well, at least he's not shooting his mouth off the way Comey did. Now, what about a special counsel for the Uranium One deal and dossier matters? Seems like we have some real crimes here, not some made-up crimes. So Jordan wants to know, when are you going to get off your duff and do something about that? Let's listen.
What's it going to take to get a special counsel? We know that former FBI Director James Comey misled the American people in the summer of 2016 when he called the Clinton investigation a matter. It's obviously an investigation. We know FBI Director Comey was drafting an exoneration letter before the investigation was complete. We know Loretta Lynch, one day before the Benghazi report came out, 5 days before Secretary Clinton was scheduled to be interviewed by the FBI, met with former President Bill Clinton on a tarmac in Phoenix. We know after that meeting, when she was corresponding with public relations people at the Justice Department, she was using the name Elizabeth Carlisle. As I've said before, it seems to me if you're just talking golf and grandkids, you can probably use your real name. We know that Mr. Comey publicized the investigation, and we know he made the final decision on whether to prosecute or not. And then when he gets fired, he leaks a government document through a friend to the New York Times, and what was his goal? To create momentum for a special counsel, and of course it can't just be any special counsel, it's got to be Bob Mueller, his best friend, his predecessor, his mentor. The same Bob Mueller who was involved, we've now learned, in this whole investigation with the informant regarding Russian businesses wanting to do business in the uranium business here in the United States regarding the Uranium One deal. So I guess my main question is, what's it going to take, if all that, not to mention the dossier information, what's it going to take to actually get a special counsel?
It would take a factual basis that meets the standards of the appointment of a special counsel.
Okay, that was long, but I want you to hear it because it really lays it out. Okay, now Jordan lists all the potential crimes that could trigger an appointment of a special counsel, and the Attorney General is still not ready to tell him anybody he's going to pull the trigger, but at least he's got a lot of stuff to think about, so let's listen to that.
Well, we know one fact. We know the Clinton campaign, the Democrat National Committee paid for, through the law firm, paid for the dossier. We know that happened, and it sure looks like, The FBI was paying the author of that document, and it sure looks like a major political party was working with the federal government to then turn an opposition research document, the equivalent of some National Enquirer story, into an intelligence document, take that to the FISA court so that they could then get a warrant to spy on Americans associated with President Trump's campaign. That's what it looks like. And I'm asking you, doesn't that warrant, in addition to all the things we know about James Comey in 2016, doesn't that warrant naming a second special counsel, as 20 members of this committee wrote you 3.5 months ago asking you to do?
Well, Mr. Comey is no longer the director of the FBI.
Thank goodness.
We have an excellent man of integrity and ability in Chris Wray, and I think he's going to do an outstanding job.
Okay.
Oh, well,
Tony,
treason.
Tony, the media are nervous.
Yep.
According to this Washington Examiner report,
Good.
Media are nervous about Clinton getting a special counsel against Clinton. The New York Times says it would be revenge for the Mueller investigation. ABC News worried Tuesday that the whataboutism that Republicans are displaying to direct attention to Clinton is now dangerously close to becoming U.S. Department policy. I mean, I think, isn't that what the Democrats were doing, beating the drum on Russia the whole time? And Russia collusion? It seems that way. Now, let's talk about some hard evidence here. Let's talk about it. Sarah Carter, who has proven herself in the last year as being a very effective investigative reporter, she talked to Sean Hannity.
Very good.
She has learned and broke the story this week that, yes, the Department of Justice is investigating the following topics: unmaskings, leaks, the phony dossier, the Clinton Foundation, Uranium One, and that a special counsel may be named if evidence is sufficient. Even though Sessions was not willing to give anybody a hint that he would do that, she says there's enough there. So let's listen to her.
Now what we know for certain is that for a while now, the Department of Justice has been looking into all of these allegations, and not just Uranium One, but the Clinton Foundation, leaks out of the FBI, and the unmasking of Americans. These are huge subjects, and now what we know is that they've been looking into it all year long as well, and these are congressional criminal referrals, which means that the Department of Justice now takes that one step further and goes to the FBI and says, look, can you look into this? What information can we find out to build cases? Is there something here?
Okay, now it turns out Jeff Sessions has been doing his job, according to Sarah Carter. He just can't shoot his mouth off the way Comey did. So let's listen to that.
It appears that he had been doing his job. It's just that they're not discussing it publicly. And a lot of this has to do with, if you go back to former FBI Director James Comey, and this is what some of the sources have been telling me. He was chided for coming out and speaking publicly about ongoing investigations when he hadn't taken that one step further and gone to the Attorney General, which is what he should have done. So what they're trying to say is, look, although we're not talking about this publicly, we're doing our job. We've been working on these. The FBI is now involved in this. We are looking at the evidence. We are building up these cases. And if necessary, a special counsel can be appointed.
Okay, so the FBI informant is one person, according to Sarah Carter, and others like Greg Jarrett, who's an attorney and works for Fox News, who can actually connect the dots for someone like a special prosecutor.
I believe that this informant has information that can actually change the direction of what we've seen in the past. I believe that he needs a platform to get that information out, and that's part of this investigation.
And
let's give Sean Hannity a plug. I mean, every night, 5 nights a week, he's got people like Sarah Carter on, and he needs to, he's doing his job. And, of course, she's doing her job, and that's good because the truth is coming out, and hopefully some of these people will get tried for treason because that's what they're doing. They're doing things to destroy this country. They're not doing anything to help it.
Of course, Hillary Clinton made a comment about all this. She told Mother Jones that, there would be an abuse of power for them to investigate her righteousness. So now Trey Gotti also was on fire, but he took a different tack, more philosophical tack, with the Attorney General, talking about whether presidents should be allowed, or presidents should, whether they're allowed or not, because they are allowed under the Constitution to interfere with the Attorney General. Believe it or not, a lot of people don't know that. It's just considered unseemly to do so. But he wanted to ask the Attorney General if it's appropriate for the president to get involved in these investigations, and here's what he says.
Mr. Conyers asked you whether or not it was appropriate for the president to weigh in an ongoing investigation. And, of course, the answer to that is no. It is not appropriate. It's not appropriate in 2017. It wasn't appropriate when President Obama did it in the IRS targeting scandal. It wasn't appropriate when President Obama did it in the ongoing investigation into Hillary Clinton's server. It is never appropriate for a president to tell a Department of Justice what outcome it should reach. I just wish my friends on the other side had the same outrage when President Obama did it as they do now.
Yeah. And, you know, it's what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So he asked the question, how do you restore public trust in this tarnished Department of Justice that has been so tarnished by the previous administration?
We intend to do our work according to the established principles of the Department of Justice. We will not be infected by politics or bias. We will make only decisions we believe are right and just, and we're not going to use the department to unlawfully advance a political agenda. We're going to enforce the laws of this country effectively as Congress has passed them. And I am determined that when the years go by, that people will say this Department of Justice did not crumble. It stayed firm and true to the great principles that I was taught in the 15 years I served in the Department of Justice.
Trey Gowdy is fond of talking about that blindfolded lady that holds the scales of justice not being interfered with.
Doing a good job.
And of course, Trey Gowdy, who spoke at the Lincoln Day dinner a few years ago here at the Ocean Center, sincerely believes in that principle. The principle being justice should be the call of the... Now, speaking of justice, Tony, it seems that the President Trump, while everybody's looking everywhere else, has been slowly remaking the federal judiciary. Little by little, Mitch McConnell is getting judges confirmed. In the weeks before he took office, lawyers joining the administration gathered at the law firm near the Capitol, where Don McGahn, soon-to-be White House counsel, filled a whiteboard with a secret battle plan to fill the federal appeals courts with young and deeply conservative judges. That's exactly what they have done. Nearly a year later, that plan is coming to fruition. Mr. Trump has already appointed 8 appellate judges, the most this early in a presidency since Richard Nixon. And on Thursday, last Thursday, the Senate Judiciary Committee voted along party lines to send a 9th appellate nominee, Mr. Trump's deputy White House counsel, Gregory Katsas, to the floor. Republicans are systematically filling appellate seats they held open during President Barack Obama's presidency, and they're filling a lot of district court judges. But the appellate courts are very important because they feed the cases that go to the Supreme Court.
Right, and the courts are very important, and of course, Mitch McConnell let the Democrats hold all this up since the first of the year because they were able to blue slip just because the judge was coming up. The Democrats had the ability to put a blue slip on these people and say, well, no, we're not going to talk about you this week. We're going to delay you for 4 or 5 or 6 weeks.
And just to explain to our listeners what a blue slip is, if a senator has a judge coming up for appointment who is from his home state,
right,
he has usually the courtesy of the Senate is that senator has to approve or endorse that to go through. Otherwise, it doesn't go through as a courtesy to that senator. So that's called a blue slip when they prevent one from going through.
And McConnell finally did what he needed to do. Is he didn't abolish it, but he just said, no, you're not going to do that anymore. We're going to pink slip your blue slip.
Okay.
And that's the reason why these things are moving a little bit faster today than they were 30 days ago.
We've got more Trump Talk Live for you just ahead. We're going to take you overseas and take you on a head-spinning tour of the world when Trump Talk Live continues.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033. We'll return in a moment to bring you more Trump Talk Live, shedding the light of truth from that shining city on a hill.
It's the Rubber Ducky River Run, Sunday, November 19th. Come take a run down the riverside, starting at Fortunato Park for the duckiest 5K around. Registration starts at 9 a.m. and the race starts at 10. The race includes free t-shirts for all pre-registered runners, multiple age and gender medal categories, and prizes for best costumes. All runners also receive their own rubber duck. Plus, there's the post-race party at the Ormond Beach Riverfest Seafood Festival right after in the casements. The award ceremony takes place on the main stage, and runners 21 and up get a free beer. So come get quacky on Sunday, November 19th. For race details and to pre-register, text Rubber Duck, one word, to 40691. That's Rubber Duck, one word, to 40691. Text rates apply. Sponsored by Ormond Beach Main Street and brought to you by FM 93.5 and AM 1150 WNDB.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033.
Welcome back, Trump Republicans. A couple of important developments from overseas that are part of our world tour segment here tonight. A House panel has voted to defund the Palestinian Authority's so-called pay-to-slay policy. Now, what is that? That is a program that the Palestinians have whereby they're using U.S. dollars that fund the Palestinians, and they pay bounties to the families of terrorists who might get killed in the process of killing innocent victims on behalf of their cause.
Yep.
So, in other words, the United States for years has been subsidizing the murder of innocent people, including Americans, unwittingly by funding the Palestinians. So what's happening now? A bipartisan panel of House lawmakers voted to threaten to defund the Palestinian Authority over support for terrorism following the murder of an American man in Israel. The House Foreign Affairs Committee passed the Taylor Force Act unanimously on Wednesday. Unanimously, Tony, as lawmakers hope to force the Palestinian Authority to scrap support for terrorists. The bill is named for a former Army officer whose murderer was celebrated by Palestinian leaders. Congress hopes to crack down on those assaults by threatening to withdraw the $300 million in foreign aid to the Palestinian leadership. The legislation forces the Palestinian Authority to choose between U.S. assistance and these morally reprehensible policies. And so Ed Royce said of the committee, "I'm pleased to see this measure move forward in both chambers with so much support." The legislation requires the end of the practice notorious on Capitol Hill as a pay-to-slay program. Under current law, the Palestinian Authority agrees to provide stipends to the families of individuals who are arrested or killed in Israel after committing acts of violence. Taylor Force's parents have been working for months in Congress to coerce the Congress into putting an end to this policy. Okay.
Yeah, they ought to take all the money away from them.
Okay, let's go on to Saudi Arabia, where all of a sudden the king, who's I believe in his 80s, is stepping down. King Salman. Trump had a triumphant tour and visit in Saudi Arabia where he called on the Muslim nations of the world to drive terrorists from the face of the earth. And this Saudi government is trying to reform, to get the hardliners, the Muslims, away from that and stop funding terrorism. The king is stepping aside for his 32-year-old son and designated heir. The prince, youngest ever to take over, I think, in years, Tony, in the House of Saud.
Yep.
And Prince Mohammed bin Salman, he has ordered the arrest previously now of more than 40 princes and government ministers in a corruption probe. He put them in a luxury hotel sleeping on mattresses on the floor. That's how they were in prison. But the fact is, he's cleaned house. He's cleaned house. He's draining the swamp in the desert, if you could say that.
They're going out and arresting billionaires.
And these people are trying to work with Trump to get control of this violence in the Middle East and get prosperity because they see the benefits of it. And they're actually working behind the scenes cooperatively with Israel, which is not well known.
That's right.
So they're trying to get these Islamic hardliners out of the way, and that is a sign that it's on the way to happening. Now, President Trump, as I said, has returned from a long tour. It was almost 2 weeks long. The longest tour overseas of American presidents since Richard Nixon went to China for the first time, which was considered historic. He has returned with more than $250 billion in deals. China Energy Investment Corporation agreed to a 20-year, $83.7 billion investment in shale gas developments and chemical manufacturing projects in West Virginia. Another deal will take place between China Petroleum and Chemical Corporation and the Alaskan government. They'll jointly develop the state's liquefied natural gas industry in a $43 billion project that Alaska says will create up to 12,000 jobs. Qualcomm signed agreements worth $12 billion with several Chinese handset makers. Boeing scored a big hit with a sale of 300 Boeing jets to state-run China aviation suppliers in a $37 billion deal. Now, how does this all happen? Well, the president led off by talking about his trip, by talking about how important confidence in America is, number one.
When we are confident in ourselves, our strength, our flag, our history, our values, Other nations are confident in us. And when we treat our citizens with the respect they deserve, other countries treat America with the respect that our country so richly deserves.
Now, the president talks about what a mess this was in the world and this country when he took office, the challenges that he confronted, and what he's done about them in a very short period of time. Number two.
When I came into office, our country was faced with a series of growing dangers. These threats included rogue regimes pursuing deadly weapons, foreign powers challenging America's influence, the spread of the murderous terror group ISIS, and years of unfair trade practices that had dangerously depleted our manufacturing base and wiped out millions and millions of middle-class jobs. The challenges were inherited, and these products really showed what previous mistakes were made over many years and even decades by other administrations. Some of these mistakes were born of indifference and neglect, others from naive thinking and misguided judgment. In some cases, the negative influence of partisan politics and special interests was to blame. But the one common thread behind all of these problems was a failure to protect and promote the interests of the American people and American workers.
What he promised to do when he took office.
Above all, I swore that in every decision, with every action, I would put the best interests of the American people first. Over the past 10 months, traveling across the globe and meeting with world leaders, that is exactly what I have done.
You know, it started with a triumphant trip to the Mideast, and when he called upon Muslim nations to fight terrorism and seek peace with Israel.
In Brussels, I urged our NATO allies to do more to strengthen our crucial alliance and set the stage for significant increases in member contributions. Billions and billions of dollars are pouring in because of that initiative. NATO, believe me, is very happy with Donald Trump and what I did.
Yeah, and we mentioned earlier, of course, the Muslim nations, but that was out of sequence, so we don't have that soundbite. But then let's go to Warsaw, a speech that was resident of Ronald Reagan.
That's right.
He talks about his call to save Western civilization in Warsaw.
Earlier this year in Saudi Arabia, I spoke to the leaders of more than 50 Arab and Muslim nations about our strategy to defeat terrorists by stripping them of financing, territory, and ideological support. And I urge the leaders to drive out the terrorists and extremists from their societies. Since that time, we have dealt ISIS one crushing defeat after another. In Israel, I reaffirmed the unbreakable bond between America and the Jewish state, and I met with leaders of the Palestinian Authority and initiated an effort to facilitate lasting peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Okay, we're going to be running out of time if we go through all of these, so I'm going to switch down to number 12. When he spoke before the National Assembly, he recalled his Asian trip. He stopped in Japan, he stopped in South Korea, he stopped in China, he stopped in Vietnam, and then he stopped in the Philippines. And in all these cases, he signed these business deals, but he also got to an understanding with all these leaders about what a common problem that the entire region has to confront, and that is the threat posed by a nuclear North Korea. So let's listen to that comment.
Speaking before the National Assembly of the Republic of Korea, I spoke the truth about the evil crimes of the North Korean regime, and I made clear that we will not allow this twisted dictatorship to hold the world hostage to nuclear blackmail. I called on every nation, including China and Russia, to unite in isolating the North Korean regime, cutting off all ties of trade and commerce until it stops its dangerous provocation. We have to denuclearize North Korea. We have ended the failed strategy of strategic patience, and as a result, we have already seen important progress, including tough new sanctions from the UN. South Korea agreed to harmonize sanctions and joined the United States in sanctioning additional rogue actors whose funds have helped North Korea and North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. It's unacceptable to us.
Okay, now President Trump wrapped up this little speech by talking about how America, he says, is back and nothing is beyond our reach anymore.
As long as we are true to ourselves, faithful to our founding and loyal to our citizens, then there is no task too great, no dream too large, no goal beyond our reach. My fellow citizens, America is back, and the future has never looked brighter.
Okay, so that's a summary. But the president gave a world tour, and really, they thought he would be an absolute.
He did a fantastic job. Fantastic job.
It was a triumphant visit.
Yep. We wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving next week.
Count your blessings, and
Count
Donald
your
Trump
blessings.
is responsible
Thank
for
God
good many
for
of
Donald
them.
J. Trump.
Thank you, folks. See you next week.
Feeling stuck in a state of compensation stagnation? You know, another year with no raise. Then let State Farm agent Sonia Mori in DeLand help you get to a better state with a discount double check that can stretch your hard-earned dollars a little farther. Sonia will go through your car insurance to make sure you're getting all the discounts you deserve. Discounts that could add up to 40% and put a few hundred extra dollars in your pocket. Sound good? Then get your budget to a better state by calling State Farm agent Sonia Mori in DeLand today. Discounts may vary state to state.
You've been listening to Trump Talk Live, making America great again, 1 hour at a time. Follow us at Volusia County Republican Party on Facebook or go to our website, TrumpTalkLive.com for updates. Join your Trump-Publican hosts, Vic Baker and Tony Ledbetter, for another fearless edition of Trump Talk Live next Thursday at 7 p.m. right here on WNDB 1150 AM and 93.5 FM. Trump Talk Live is presented each week by the Republican Party of Volusia County, where we the people have the right voice when it comes to defending America's founding values. In God we trust, in America we believe.
The Republican Executive Committee of Volusia County is responsible for the content of this advertising.
FM 93.5, AM 1150 WNDB Daytona Beach. Proud to be locally owned, a Southern Stone station.
Streaming? More insight into
I just did.